Welcome to another episode of the Loadout Music Podcast, featuring in-depth interviews with a wide range of music personalities, from rock and roll Hall of Famers to Grammy winners and today's rising stars. Recorded in St. Louis, Missouri, now here's your host, Aaron Perlitz of Atomic Junction.
Welcome back to the Loadout Music Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Aaron Perlitz. Today, I'm joined by the rare St. Louisan on the show, and if you're a fan of The Voice, you may remember him from season 23, or you might have caught him and his band, The Mighty Pines, on the road, opening for the likes of J.J. Grey, Mofro, The Dead South, Sam Bush, and others. We welcome Neil Salsich to the show. Neil, how are you today?
Hey, what's up, Aaron? I'm doing great, except for a little spring fever, like I mentioned to you. So apologies if I'm sneezing or sniffling throughout, but
It's
other than that, I'm doing great.
It is all good, my man. So tell me, I want to start with, I think, what a lot of people, particularly those outside of St. Louis, know you from, and that is obviously The Voice. But then I want to kind of backtrack a little bit. Uh, what was that? I've actually spoke to a couple of singer-songwriters who have been on American Idol and The Voice and things like that. I'm curious though. That is, it's such a massive audience, and I'm sure I imagine can be such an overwhelming experience. Uh, what was that like going through?
Well, it was a lot of things, and it was very long, so it was a lot. It was different things throughout the way. I mean, it was very exciting. Obviously, it was highly exciting.
Yeah,
Uh, First and foremost, there was different stages. There was the audition stage, where I was just auditioning via Zoom videos or whatever. And then that was all under wraps and very, very exciting. And then of course, there was the first chunk where I flew out there and taped my audition, my actual TV audition. And that was also very exciting and amped up because then I came back to St. Louis after just that blind audition for a couple months until they flew us back out for the rest of the rounds.
yeah.
So it was about a year long process, from start to finish, and overall it was exciting. But you don't know what you got till it's gone, because you just that's the lesson I learned there. I mean, they kept telling us enjoy it while it lasts, because the flame burns brightly but hot and quick, and they're right about that. So.
You think you were? I mean, I know here in St. Louis, overnight you were kind of celebritized, and I'm sure there were people, when you were out in LA or wherever you are shooting these, I'm sure people are seeing you on the street. And were you ready for that kind of experience? I'm sure I know it's the kind of thing that any singer-songwriter is like, I can't wait for people to be able to
Yeah.
recognize me. But were you ready for it now that you're looking back on it a couple of years?
Yeah, I was ready. I was wanting that, I
Yeah.
mean, and it's funny yes, there was a lot of fanfare in St. Louis, but I was there for it, you
Yeah.
know. I loved it. And but outside of St. Louis, I'm not. It's funny. The Voice is a national TV show, but I thought that I might get recognized in other cities, and I soon
Mm.
found out that that's not really the case. Um, but it is a sweet thing to always sort of have on my proverbial business card that I can hand
Yeah.
out to people. Like, it's always a good intro, and I don't know, it means a lot to a lot of people. I was never a big Voice guy before
Mm.
I did that, and I still don't watch the show, and nothing against it. In fact, I think it's an amazing show, an incredible production. I totally had my eyes open to how much goes into it and how badass it is on so many levels. So I'm not against it. I just don't track it or watch it anymore. But I forget that, yeah, that is I can pretty much flash that card anywhere and sort of get in the building, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's cool. I'll have that with me forever.
Yeah. Do you ever get sick of people like me asking you about it?
Not really. Not no, I don't get sick of it. I sometimes I'm surprised. It's not, but I remember every time I start talking about it, I remember that it to me I'm like so over it
Hmm.
because I was not because it was lame or anything. That's it's just because I was in it for so long, filming it and like and my life, I'm the one that's experiencing my life in all of the mundaneness that it still has and all the basic shit. And I forget, yeah, from other eyes looking in, um, the voice is still this sensational thing. So at first, sometimes I'm surprised people want to know about it, but then I realize why wouldn't they? It is the flashy thing. It's the first thing the eye goes to on the resume. So no, I'm always happy to talk about it. And in fact, it even can remind me how awesome it was and how grateful I am for that experience.
Yeah. I want to go back to kind of your start in music. And I know that my understanding is that you never really saw, when you were young, you didn't see music as kind of a career path for you. But I know that your father had made some mixtape for you, and it was kind of like your gateway drug into finding passion around music. Talk about how you kind of, as a young man growing up in St. Louis, kind of started finding your way into music and finding your passion in it.
Yeah, I just always loved it from like I mean, I some of my earliest memories are just being totally obsessed with music. So I don't know if it was a lot of nurture, but I think there was some sort of nature to it where I don't know. I think I came out of the womb just wanting to hear music or picking it up because it's just even as a little kid, like with toys. I mean, I was obsessed with like the Discman and the Walkman, and just once I figured out how to play, and the triangle meant play and the square meant stop, and I would get songs I loved even as a freaking 5 year old. My parents would tell me they were just I don't know. So I just always loved music, and I don't know if I. It's never that I didn't see it as a career path. Really, I guess that part just came later when I had to have a career. But even as a kid, I think I was pretty emotionally and spiritually like I wasn't thinking about being a baseball player or like the president or whatever. Like I was daydreaming about playing music as a young kid in my head from the start. Um,
But you were, I mean, you growing up, you were involved in, it seems like you had a kind of a diverse upbringing in terms of the things you're doing. You're playing sports,
yeah,
going to
it
school,
was just
doing all,
normal.
stuff that every kid does,
It
right?
was. I had a very just quintessential childhood in a good way. I mean, yeah. I mean, music was around, but it wasn't like I wasn't growing up in the industry or anything. But music was around my house just like it was in most houses.
Yeah.
The radio was on in the car. I mean, my CDs were being played around the house. My dad definitely was a music nerd. There's like I had a lot of obscure, relatively obscure music, niche stuff, in bouncing around my brain because of him specifically. So, but and then I had an extended family that was playing a lot of music recreationally, like at cookouts and stuff. And only when I became an adult that I kind of realized, yeah, that was the atypical part of it probably was just seeing music very, I wouldn't say normalized, but like ritualized or something in the family setting. I mean, lots of lots of guitar strumming and singing of James Taylor songs and Hank Williams songs and stuff. But you don't really think about that as a kid. It's just like you're running through the adults doing that, and you're getting more Doritos and taking them downstairs with your cousins to finish watching Jurassic Park or something. You know.
What was the point for you where, and I know you went to college, you're an English major in college, but and you're a music minor, but what was the point for you where you're like, I think this is going to be my career?
That's funny. There was probably a lot of those moments, but it's funny. I still think about one. I do think about one specific moment because of the time I was in my life. I was probably 23 and I had just moved home from college. And I was seeing a band at the Gramophone when they still had music there. And this band was called Danger Muffin. They're still together. They're incredible. Um, they're from South Carolina, but they're now based in, I don't know where they're somewhere on the East Coast. But they were playing at the Gramophone, and I don't know. It's not like they were superstars or anything. They were just a band trying to make it. I do remember seeing them on being in the crowd and just thinking to myself right then and there, like I know I could do what they're doing on stage. I just I don't know. I remember saying that to myself, and I tried to explain that to my parents, and they were still kind of understandably skeptical. Um, but I think that's when I was just started really trying to actualize that vision. Because I just knew it. I knew if those guys can do it, and they were great. This is a super talented band that I was seeing, but I did feel like that was accessible. I just
Yeah.
thought I know I could stand up there on stage and sing songs like that guy is doing with a great band. You know.
Yeah. And, and there's a when I watch you, when I see you perform, whether it's in a live setting or whether it's on video or whether you're talking about music on video, I get the sense of it brings you a tremendous amount of joy. Like you just have this kind of hop in your step when you're talking about music, playing music that I even like your facial expressions on your podcast. I'm watching your facial expressions when you pick up guitar and you're playing your guest's song. There's a certain joy in your eyes that is, for me, infectious. Um, and I'm curious if, like, if you feel that, or if it's something that's just kind of, you're not overtly trying to echo this joy, but it's just like it's just flowing out of you. It's
Yeah. No. I
subconscious to a
I
degree.
appreciate that. You know, music does bring me a lot of joy. It's my favorite thing in the world. And I think there's plenty of times on stage. I'd say like 50% of the time on stage, I'm just feeling that joy naturally. And then there's like 50% of it where I might still be I've just learned how to perform, which part of that means smiling, smile like you mean it. I mean, I'm not always I'm still on stage. I might still be thinking about shit or trying, critiquing myself, not in a bad way, but it's interesting the flow state. I know that you can understand this to some extent. I mean, every performer can. I mean, and I think it must be the same with athletes. You're thinking about quite a bit while you're performing. But
Yeah.
and the brain works so fast. It's unbelievable. So I can be observing myself and thinking about what I was just singing and also kind of thinking about the next phrase I'm going to sing. I mean, that's a lot going on. And also looking at maybe my cousins in the crowd or like my old childhood friend. I mean, all of this is happening in like an instant in your brain, which is kind of remarkable. Um, and so I guess I'm just uh, remarking on that to say that there's just a lot going on at any given
Yeah.
moment while I'm performing. However, yeah, there's a joy, there's a real joy. I mean, I love music. I'm really a music nerd first and foremost. I mean, like I'm happiest really just swimming in records at home, and on Wikipedia late at night looking up discographies and shit. But that uh, doesn't make I can't make a living off of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I know. I understand what you mean in that one on just the things going through your mind as you're playing. I think I approach it the way I approach. I played basketball for years and years at a relatively high competitive level. And I always thought about the shots that I missed as opposed to, and I obsessed over them as opposed to the shots that I made or a turnover instead of a good assist. I was thinking about what I did wrong. And I find myself doing that when I'm performing, um, which is probably why I often don't like performing solo because you're just completely naked. And at least
Yeah.
within the context of a band, you've got that full orchestra that's kind of covering for your shortcomings. But I do spend a lot of, to your point, I'm thinking about
Yeah.
every little aspect of the performance as it's unfolding in real time.
Yeah, it's bizarre. And I wish I could be more present to it, and a lot of times I am. I really am. But there's but people come up to me and say, "Oh my God, you're such a performer. You're so happy on stage." And I like hearing that because actually it gives me some positive encouragement that I'm like on the right track. But I wouldn't I don't it's not that's not necessarily how I feel. I'm not a natural performer. I'm a natural musician. I'm a natural singer, but it took me a long time to feel it's all a spectrum, but to get closer to feeling comfortable on stage. And the voice was a huge part of that, I think. But you only recognize the growth after, looking back.
Yeah.
So a lot
I
of
still struggle with that as well because I'm in particular thinking about just the machinations of my body movements on stage and wondering, you know, did that look stupid? I'm an old man with a gray beard and what have you. Yeah, and so I've had to work on that on the performance to your point. Because where my strength has always lied has been in writing lyrics, songwriting, and so I'm up there to tell a story. And when I first started, I wasn't thinking about you're also here to kind of move the audience through performance. And I didn't originally understand that when I first started. And so I've had to learn that. And so I do take, to your point, I really enjoy when people say, they remark on your performance,
yeah,
on just how it made them feel and how your movements
yeah.
somehow impacted them, hopefully in a positive way. Um, yeah. Uh, so,
I also
so
say I like this discussion. I think I realize there's different like traditions of music that people come from, and because I think about this a lot in terms of your stage presentation and like so and I think about this a lot because of my experience in the Playadors locally, which is this like fabulously even just visually, it's like very it's a beautiful looking band, and then there's these amazing female singers on stage that are just the outfits are like almost an expression of the musicality, right? But I came from I'm glad to soak that up because like I came from more of this sort of like Crosby, Stills and Nash, Grateful Dead tradition, or like Townes Van Zandt. That was the idols I had for so long, and those kind of traditions like they're not really prioritizing the way
they're
you're
just
dressed.
standing there. They're, I
Yeah, it's
mean,
cool. Yeah, and that there's nothing wrong with that. And so like it's just interesting to me the whole the end of the spectrum that's more like James Brown or Prince um, that I've gotten through the Plydoors and through the voice, like the more just traditional like performance, Whitney Houston style stuff, pop music. That is newer to me, but I'm glad that's rubbing off, and I'm noticing myself become definitely more of an entertainer, which I think is really important. But um, I think it's equally as compelling and entertaining to watch Jerry Garcia or Fish play, which are huge things for me. And that's a very basic kind of they're not they're consciously shedding the image. They're not concerned with that. The music is the only thing. It's interesting. There's no right or wrong. I'm glad I'm now having both channels influence me.
yeah, no, you're right. And I understand exactly what you're talking about because I grew up with this kind of split personality in loving late 60s, early 70s funk music, um, loving kind of traditional classic rock and roll from like the Faces to the Stones to what have you, to the Black Crowes, and loving kind of 70s country music, where the guys like Johnny Cash and Waylon Jennings just stood there. I
Yeah.
mean, Johnny Cash just stood there and his voice was very monotone. Um, and I would say that probably a lot of the songs that I write are more in that tradition, but I also try to keep in my mind that, when you think about people that talk about the amazing shows they've seen, I remember when I saw James Brown perform at Lohmeyer Sculpture Park,
Ah,
and and he was, this was 8 months before he,
Lohmeyer?
yeah, this was 8 months before he died, and it blew my mind because he's, near 80 at the time, and he's keeping up with this woman who looked like she was in her 20s and looked like, a cheerleader, and his physicality is able to keep up that pace, and it's unbelievable. Or to see Prince play, and
Yeah.
it's unbelievable. But and I do think you're right. For certain performers, there's an expectation that uh, you're there beyond to hear the music. You're here to see a full show. Like it's a thing. And I have a son he's a musical theater performer, and so that's part of his what he's learning is that it's I always think about that. There's a funny line in The Simpsons years ago where the guy's talking about, "I'm a triple threat. I sing, act, and dance," and it's a thing. I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I was just not, I didn't come from, yeah, my total container when I was young was the singer-songwriter thing and like jazz were the big things in my household, and that's also understated from a stage,
so chill, so chill.
which is great. And so it's cool. Yeah, it kind of blows my mind to like study these other type of pop performers. A lot of that started on The Voice for me in terms of having to real actually assimilate it into my own artistry. And I'm glad that they kind of took the guitar away, said sing, and also you gotta like walk around the stage, and so here's some like basic choreography. They ran us through that. It was very simple stuff, but even at the time I was like, whoa, this is like, how do I do this? I've always had a guitar.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
So let's talk about. I mean, it felt like after the experience in The Voice, it was incredibly valuable to the Mighty Pines in that you guys kind of
oh yeah.
blew up as a band. Um, and I know that thinking back about like just the public cachet before and after that, uh, I began hearing so much more about the Mighty Pines, and you guys launched Pines Fest, and obviously you've got a new album that we want to talk about. Um, but it seemed like that was a great stepping stone for the band in and of itself.
Yeah, it was. Um, that was an exciting year. I mean, once again, we knew it was big. We knew that it was kind of we were riding the voice wave. Um, I mean, and it elevated us up, and eventually, but all waves crest.
Yeah,
So it did, but it kind of the wave brought us up, sort of lifted us up, dropped us at another level, and then it went away. So, but we were able to resurface on that on a higher level.
yeah.
It was great.
How could,
Although a lot of that is just in St. Louis once again, which is super great. Don't get me wrong. I mean, but and it's pretty big. There's a lot of people here. Actually, it's not a huge city in the scheme of things, but uh, it's pretty big. If by a lot of standards, and so it gives us a lot of fans. But we're still and we're big dogs here, but it's not like we're still we're still pretty scrappy in those other markets.
yeah, and we've had people on the show before they have management, they have record labels, and they talk about going to Nebraska and playing for 50 people,
Yeah,
and it's hard. I mean, life playing music on the road, building a consistent audience from market to market, building that brand is really, really hard for anyone. And it's just kind of part of those dues
yeah,
you pay. And even when you go from one level to another, you're right, you're still paying almost like a second level of dues
yeah.
that you've got to deal with. Uh, let's talk a little bit about the new album. Uh, late last night. I know it was produced by Steve Berlin of Los Lobos, who I have to say, you mentioned the Dead before. Lobos does a cover of Bertha like nobody's business. It's
Yeah.
probably my probably my favorite. I love that song. I love the Dead, but I love Los Lobos version of that song. But regardless, um, what was working with Steve like, and talk about this record in general?
Yeah. This is the second record we've done with him.
Okay.
He produced our previous studio album, which was recorded in 2019 and released in 2020. So we've only ever worked with one producer, and that's been him. Um, and it's been great. I mean, I think we're interested in using other producers down the line, but Steve is just kind of at that availability and accessibility level for us, where he's a legend in our eyes. And it's funny, even a band like Los Lobos, all fame is relative because
Yeah.
like there's a lot of people who think the Mighty Pines are a big deal. We are just like puny next to Los Lobos and their legacy. I mean, but there's a lot of people that have no clue who Los Lobos
Yeah.
is, and like, but you and I do, and we think like I mean, like, how could it get better than Los Lobos is like total legends to us in that Americana scene. I don't know. It's just interesting. Steve is an amazing guy, and in a lot of ways, he's just like, I mean, all musicians really are. They're just like normal people, as you know. I mean,
Sure.
he's like he's just he loves the job. He loves the work. He's not really a rock star attitude or anything like that, even though he would, he'd record with us for a few days, and we were in St. Louis at Sawhorse Studios in Dutchtown, and then he'd fly out to freaking LA, and they'd play at the Hollywood Bowl or something with like Willie Nelson, and then he'd fly back and we'd do a couple more dates, and then he'd fly to wherever, you know what I'm saying? So it's like crazy. And to him, he's like, he's already he's just done it so many times. He's not. I would kill for his gigs. You know what I
Mm.
mean? And to him, I know I'm not saying he takes them for granted, but it's just interesting. It's all relative. You know what I mean? It was great working with him. He's got so much experience and knowledge. I mean, that if you want to take your recordings to the next level, work with a producer, because they're just going to offer things. They're going to bring things. They're going to bring a set of ears to the table that you don't have. It's frustrating at times. It's like being in a band. Like, you get a lot from collaboration, but you have to give up stuff, and that is hard. And also, it's just it's I still don't really know the answer to this question, and I'll probably search for this truth for the rest of my life. But like, what's the line between, how do you know what you need to preserve with your own artistic intuition, and then what do you need to give up? And it's kind of impossible to tell, because there's times where you're going to want to say, you know what, as the songwriter, I hear your idea about changing this or that in the song, but basically you're wrong and I'm right. And I don't, on a real, like, real true artistic sense. I mean, sometimes you feel that way, and sometimes the other person, the song did not come from them. They don't quite understand it the way you do. They might be wrong. And I hate to use words like wrong, right, by the way, with this, but it's the best way to kind of
Yeah.
quickly describe it. There's other times where those other fresh ears and eyes that have no attachment to the song, no baggage, nothing, they're gonna see things a little bit clearer than you do. And the difference between those two situations is really hard to tell. I still haven't figured that out, but there's a lot of that. There's a lot of dancing on that line between those two situations
No,
with
I know exactly what you're talking about. When we recorded our last studio album, we were working with a producer up in New York, and he had me change the phrasing of kind of this hook in the chorus, um, that I had become very accustomed to playing live and singing in a certain way. And he didn't change a whole lot, but this one was something he thought was really important. And so, to your point, I think you make these compromises artistically where you have to find that line and say, okay, I'm willing to do this, or there might be something that no, I want to stand,
Yeah.
stand on that hill and protect that because that's really important to me for whatever reason it might be. So I know exactly what you're talking about. But you make these artistic choices that sometimes are beneficial and sometimes they're not. I try to, I know in my experience, I really try to also listen to the other guys in the band in terms of like song choices, and then if there's a question between with a producer or not, like lean on the guys in the band, say, what do you think? Because we've all been playing this together and gotten developed this kind of harmonic comfort level together that but it's a hard choice. I understand exactly what you're saying sometimes.
It's hard, but it's ultimately good. And producers, Steve just brings a lot of studio technique. Frankly, that's one of the main things is we don't. He's recorded hundreds, if not thousands, of records. As a bandmate and producer, and he just knows how to do things in the studio that we would never have thought. So
Yeah.
that's insanely valuable. Just having that kind of know-how. Um,
Sometimes I find it's even the suggestions on the instrumentation. It might be an overdub or what have you, but something you haven't thought of yet, and it might be something subtle, and then you hear it in the end product, and you're like, "Oh, holy shit!" Like that, those keys right there that we had never thought about sound. That's what we need. That was what was missing, and we didn't even realize it. But the producer sees that, they hear that.
Hopefully, and no producer is perfect either. So it's like you just got to take the good with the bad, and they're kind of a member of the band for the period of the album. You got to kind of realize that, like their
Yeah.
voice. If we have, in our band where we have four members plus an honorary keyboardist member who's not always recording with us, but let's say there's four voices usually at the table. If you have a producer, that's five, and you just got to kind of accept that for the time being, for the duration of the recording. And then you part ways, and just like actors say, you're best friends for like 9 months, and then you never see each other again, and that's kind of the life.
So talk a little bit about specifically the new album
Yeah.
and you know, as we know, as you go through this process from one album to another, you evolve, you grow, you change sometimes and sometimes you don't. Talk about how this has evolved you guys as a band and how it's different from what previously you've recorded.
Yeah. It's I mean, we get older and wiser and more experienced, and we just get better. So it's kind of like it's not that much different stylistically from our last record. I just think it's better executed, I mean,
Yeah.
like like literally everything about it, especially from a performance standpoint, is just better, and the songwriting's better too. I mean, so it's not this like crazy different thing. I hope people will stop calling us a bluegrass band, which I mean, the funny thing is that sounds like so, you know, crotchety of me. It's just funny to me that when people listen to our music, we have a bluegrass vibe, but it's not to me, to my ears, it's nothing close to like bluegrass. But
I hear variations from song to song though.
it, yeah,
As particularly, I pay a lot of attention to the videos you guys release on Instagram, and I think the one that was most recently released that I saw had a real bluegrass vibe. But the one you guys opened, the first release that's going to be on the new album, it was to me different than anything I'd ever heard from you guys, and it had more this blend of Americana and pop and soul in it, and
that's who we are. But that's even what our last record I think sounds like too. It just didn't get listened to a lot because we weren't as well known at that point, and the record kind of went nowhere because it was during the pandemic. So it's just like we also realized this time around, you can't just like release your record. Like it sucks, but you can't just be like, okay, record's out. Here's my Instagram post. Thanks for listening, and then that's gonna just go nowhere.
but
So
there's a whole process now. I mean, with
yeah,
like, I know I'm trying to wrap my head around it as well, but I mean, it's like you think about, okay, we got to drop this single, and then another single, and then maybe a third single, and then by the time the third single, then the next thing you drop is the full album or something,
Yeah.
and it
It's a lot. I
depends.
know.
It's exhausting.
It's a lot. It's a lot. But, you have to, I mean, even back in the day, though, they had an industry that was doing that for you. And there's still a version of that industry today. So, like, we, have hired uh, a sort of digital PR firm, or I don't even know what music marketing. Let's forget PR. Yeah, a digital music marketing firm that's basically advising us on this entire process. And so, but that costs money, and that's why we're basically broke right now. Uh, it's funny, and we have so much going for us. We have so much. I mean, we're so grateful. We work so hard, um, and I'm still like checking our bank account like every week, being like, oh my, like we think we're gonna go below zero, but we're not, and like it's it's just weird, to have that, to feel like we have so much success but still have no money, because we spend all the money. Money comes in and then you spend it on these services that we need.
On promotion. I mean, it's like
Yeah,
welcome to artistry.
I know, it's so interesting. I find that whole dynamic very fascinating and slightly surreal,
Yeah.
from mostly from the financial standpoint, to juxtapose it with all of the wonderful success and sort of brand brand success that we have. It's just interesting.
Yeah. Also, I made a mistake earlier. Late last night was the album that came out in 2019, 2020.
Yeah,
The new one is Longest Night, correct?
it's actually called "Good Luck, Nice to Meet You," the
Okay.
album. The Longest Night was the first single.
First single.
Um,
Okay.
and we're stoked on that track. We're stoked on all the tracks. I mean, I happen to think it's a fucking bomb record. I mean, I really do. But I think my opinion. I think it matters more what other people think, at least from a success standpoint. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
if it was totally up to me, yeah, the album would be like nominated for a Grammy or something. But it's not up to me. We got to just see how people react to it. Unfortunately, albums aren't really meaningful anymore. I mean, I think you and I are kind of old souls that sort of have patterned our musical psyches on decades past. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I actually wouldn't change that for the world. But I mean, I'm still, yeah, albums still matter to me. I'm still listening to like physical media, but I have those kind of terrible awakenings sometimes where I realize that like most people are just listening. Hate to say it. I mean, a lot of people aren't even listening to this shit on even Bluetooth speakers. Straight up, just coming from their phone speakers.
Yeah.
And we laugh about that when we're like obsessing in the studio over the mixing of the album or certain tones, and it's like, yikes. I mean, it's a sad. I don't think music. I'm not really super positive on just the state of global music or whatever, like in general, the way it's being consumed or valued by the average citizen of the world. But that's kind of a drag. I don't know. I think
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. And it's an interesting phenomenon what's happening because I think that I've seen a couple things. So my wife, one, always jokes about, it's like, I think you just had you been making music in the 70s, you would have a huge audience. You've been doing great, but because that's what you like. And so the music you make sounds like it should have been made in the 70s, which I think she's right. But when I speak to like my kids who are in their early 20s, and when I see the music that is blowing out the charts, a lot of it's very electronic oriented. It lacks kind of the analog sensibilities of a lot of the music that we grew up with. And I'm not saying this in a like get off of my lawn
yeah,
standpoint. I'm just saying it is what it is. And then there's another interesting phenomenon. And I think Billie Eilish really reflects this very, very well in that um, there's this blending of genres and I was speaking to we had a young lady on the show recently named Amelia Day, And I was talking to Jorma Kaukonen, who was one of the founders of Jefferson Airplane, and he and I were having one of these get off my lawn conversations, and he was talking about what his daughter is 19 listens to, and it's just this fascinating mashup of sounds that are very different that seem to appeal to people like in high school and their early 20s that are very different than I know what I grew up with. And even when I was talking to you about before, my influences of, rock and roll country and kind of funk and soul. But it is, and then you take that with the the consumption aspect and how it's being consumed. It is a entirely different phenomenon to me, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually like a lot of the. I'm not really commenting on the actual music
Yeah,
or
yeah.
styles that are being made because actually, because of the voice, I felt like I rediscovered or got back in touch with so-called modern pop music. A lot of stuff that I had like I was always listening to a lot of niche stuff, and the last time I was really on board with pop taste was when I was a kid. But all of a sudden, I was like really listening to a lot of more contemporary music over the last couple of years because this, and I was kind of blown away by how good I thought it was. The artists like Billie Eilish, artists like Harry Styles and Justin Bieber, those are to me. I can't get enough. I can't speak highly enough of the tracks that they and the songs they write. Blah blah blah. But I'm mostly bummed out about the consumption of the music and the streamingness of it, the AI of it, the Instagramification of music, the reels, just everything is if going because we're talking about an album,
Yeah.
and so like, and I'm like, well, the album is really good, but like people's attention spans can't even make it past 14 seconds, which is such a fucking cop out too. And I hate when people are just saying, "Oh, well, that's the way it is, so you gotta like make your music like that." And I'm just like, it's things are only the way they are because we just let our standards go all the time. It's like, I mean, as a society in general, it's just like, well, it's the tide. You can't stop the landslide towards AI, so you might as well just go with it. And just in general, that type of attitude is so distasteful to me. But unfortunately, the older I get, the more I realize I'm kind of one of I'm in the minority. Let's just put it that way. In many ways that I think and feel about life and art. And oh well. Anyway, but another interesting thing that is just kind I don't know if it really bums me out. I find it more fascinating, and I'm curious if it's actually real. But I just felt like when I was growing, like my generation, and I'm 37, um, at least like there was even in college. I mean, and I'm talking pretty common denominator type of stuff, like house parties that we were throwing. There still felt like there was a pretty broad awareness of and interest in, I'll call it classic rock, but things like Led Zeppelin, Pink
Hmm.
Floyd, the Beatles, those three are like, and then stuff like I'm trying to think of sort of more funk or soul versions of it, but they're just older music that still felt like even at a sorority party, like was still in. You could that stuff still meant something
Yeah.
to some extent. Uh, like 80s songs and 90s songs. And I don't know if I'm not really in touch with a lot of Gen Z or younger people, but I do have um, a 20-year-old sister in college, and I kind of ask her like, are people like, does Led Zeppelin still mean anything? Like, I mean, she's to her, I don't. I mean, she's not necessarily listening to that music herself, so she. But I'm kind of getting from her basically no, and I'm just kind of like, I get, I don't know. I guess that freaks me out a little bit because so much of my what I've built my entire artistry on is like kind of in a way what's come before me. But if what's come before me is no longer meaningful to anyone like under the age of 30, then it kind of freaks me out for like what my career is going to be like in 10 years. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, it just never occurred to me that there would be a world where like where even just the average person wasn't like remotely familiar with like Dark Side of the Moon or Led Zeppelin. And I'm not saying everyone should be a music nerd, but you know what I'm saying? Like
I know what you're saying. I
a
will,
general awareness of stuff.
I will hold out some hope for you in that I think that, in terms of you're right. All of us kind of build our music on generations before us. So I think now if you listen to bands like Greta Van Fleet, and now even more modern, to a more modern level, band right here at home, the band Feel. I mean,
Mhm.
if you listen to the band Feel, there's a lot of Led Zeppelin and Black Crowes and Humble Pie in their music. So I do think it, I also think this way. I remember my football coach used to say, opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one and they all stink. And
Yeah.
so, you know,
They're just
there's,
my opinion. I'm just observing
yeah,
and I don't know. I
it's
try
definitely less mainstream though. I agree with you
yeah.
there.
Um and I'm glad those bands are out there doing stuff because I think but I also just don't think live music is as common. I think that's even the biggest thing is like even when I was going to college in 2008 and 9 and 10, I mean, like I said, the average person still felt like they were going to concerts. The average kid. I mean, even if they weren't super duper into music, it was just more bands were playing at parties and stuff. And once again, maybe I'm just out of touch, and I'm not hanging out in college anymore and going to this shit. But I kind of am trying. I'm observing big picture what smartphones and social media, and I think a lot of people comment on this, and there's a lot of sense to this. But the more that has come into our lives, the less that we're kind of out doing these things. And I think music, not just live music, but original music um, and live music seem to be suffering broadly speaking, you know.
Oh, and I could agree with you more. And I think you probably see this, you mentioned the Playadors before, and you also play with Sean Kanan's Voodoo Players, in that tribute bands seem to be doing exceptionally well. And I hear this from bands in markets all over the country. And bars are very willing to book bands that are playing just covers because they're interested in having people there drunk and singing. Whereas I do find it very frustrating the trying to find the audience for original songwriting today. And I know you and I are going to be talking about that in mid-June when we get together at the Mountain Cities Songwriters sessions. But I imagine, you kind of see it from both ends with leading a band that plays original music, but then also, contributing to the Plydoors or Sean Cannon's Voodoo Players. You probably see it from, the energy on both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a different take on the cover bands thing. I stick up for them because I believe it's important, and I believe, well, if done well, by the way. I mean,
Yeah.
first of all, and everyone puts original music on a pedestal. A lot of original music sucks, and people go, "Why does no one come see me?" Well, maybe it's not that good. I'm not saying that that's my basic reaction to it, but
Yeah.
let's first start with that. Like, just because you have original music doesn't mean that people are going to be that interested to it. Um, and the cover thing, but and I'm not, that's I just get a little sick of people bashing covers because I also think when you're doing it well and you're playing the fucking hell out of your set and you're a great musician and you're doing it for a living, I actually think it's important work to keep the canon alive.
The
And
preservation of it, you're saying?
yes, of the songs and the music. I mean, like Rolling Stones music, Beatles music, go back even further. Hank Williams, classic rock, jazz standards. No, and it's interesting in the world of rock and Americana. There's like you have to have original music. Well, guess what? Go to like any jazz concert or any classical concert. They're just playing covers, and everyone thinks it's amazing because it is because they're keeping this music alive. And I think as the sands of time keep pouring through the bottle and we're moving further and further away from the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s of like that sort of big heyday of rock and pop music. um, those artists are leaving us, and I actually think it's going to be even more meaningful to play that music in a live setting from here on out. So I'm all for the covers thing, and it's incredibly difficult and a long, lonely road to make your own original music. So it's not for everyone. And if people are playing excellent covers, either in a very accurate way, there's two ways to do it. You can really accurately play them, like the studio version or note for note. And if you're doing that really well, that's tremendous to me. And I say two thumbs up. Or if you're playing covers and you're bringing your own unique spin on it, but you're also a great musician and you're doing it well, then I think it's amazing too. So I don't know. In St. Louis, people bash on these cover bands, but I'm usually, I'm not getting in the comment fights on social media. Yeah. So,
I think there's a place for it all. I have great appreciation for either exquisite interpretations of classical music. For instance, Ike and Tina Turner have, in my opinion, the greatest cover song ever of "Whole Lot of Love," of Led Zeppelin's "Whole Lot of Love." It is remarkable. Or you're right, playing it like a tribute band would play it, like the Long Run plays Eagles songs, or what have you. I think there's a place for it all. I'm always fascinated to have the conversation with club owners as to the economic decisions they're making and why. Because I understand, having owned a bar in my lifetime, I understand what you're there for. You're there to sell booze and to, keep your doors open and you pay your staff and make some money.
And that's unfortunately something I feel I'm starting to open my eyes to a little bit for the music industry as a whole and the way it's been for a long time. That seems very toxic to me. It's frustrating, but it obviously is. I'm not going to change it anytime soon by myself. But you kind of realize that since the 60s, I guess, or whenever, I don't know when, let's put it this way, in my lifetime, the whole industry is built around alcohol sales, which is, it's just not healthy. But and I talk all about the streaming of music and how that suffers thing. Well, I don't think, capitalism is probably great for music as just a pure art form or whatever, but it's the more I start to examine this stuff and like pick it apart, it kind of just like makes my head explode, and I'm just like, okay, I don't have the answers, I can't do this. But the whole notion of a music industry is probably inherently oppressive towards music anyway.
Yeah.
That's another thing. I'm not super qualified to comment on that other than my own personal experience making a living doing this and just being a curious person and learning about world history. So,
all right, Neil Salsich, The Mighty Pines.
Yeah.
The new album is not fully streaming yet, correct? But will be.
It's not. I'm not sure the release date of this, but yeah, we have 3 singles out right now, 2 more on the way, and the full album coming July 31st.
And you guys have a busy summer playing live music and probably into the rest of the year, correct?
We do. We do. We're very grateful. We work insanely hard, and we're just gonna keep going, man. Just one gig at a time, and it's a great life. Any musician out there knows. I mean, you may not be selling out Madison Square Garden, but at the end of the day, if you're working for yourself and playing music, there's just nothing like it.
Neil Salsich, thanks for being on the Loadout, man. We really appreciate having you.
Thank you so much, Aaron, for having me. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Loadout Music Podcast, hosted by Atomic Junction frontman Aaron Perlett. Find all of our episodes and more at loadoutmusic.com.